I'm Terence Lee from KKR. I'm a director based in Singapore, and I lead our TMT practice in Southeast Asia. KKR is a global investment firm. We have about 200 billion of assets under management. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce Hari Krishnan.
I can just go.
Oh, yeah, I think you need that. Hari Krishnan and PropertyGuru. Hari is the CEO and board director of PropertyGuru Group. As Southeast Asia's largest PropTech company, it has 55% consumer market share, 5x of the nearest competitor. Hari leads over 1,000 employees across Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Hari has 2 decades of industry leadership in tech organizations across Asia Pacific and the United States. He has spent the last 15 years helping companies and industries in Asia digitize. So we at KKR had the good fortune to invest in PropertyGuru late last year. It's very early days still, but I'm pleased to say that the company is doing extremely well, and Hari and his senior management team have been delivering and actually exceeding expectations on all fronts. So pleased to have Hari here. Please send in your questions, and Hari will do a few-minute presentation now.
Great. Thanks, Terence. I have the misfortune of being the post-lunch session. So I'm hoping everyone's somewhat awake. We're going to try and keep it somewhat interactive and make sure there are lots of questions coming in. So hopefully, by show of hands, how many of you have heard of PropertyGuru? Okay, that's encouraging. So PropertyGuru started out in Singapore about 12 years ago. As I like to tell people, we started in a pre-iPhone era. There were no app developers. There were no Uber drivers. We started at a time where we were trying to bring transparency to the property sector in that market. We entered Malaysia in 2011. We operate in 5 markets. Now, I'm going to sort of talk to you a little bit about a vision statement that we put out late last year, around the time we invited Terence and KKR onto our board. As we started building out the business across the region, we found that there was a distinct trust deficit that existed between every stakeholder that exists in the property sector. Property seekers, agents, developers, banks. None of them trust each other. That's the reality of the ecosystem within which we work. Now, I've spent my entire career in tech, and the 2 things I think tech are most synonymous with is the injection of transparency and efficiency. So we felt that this trust deficit is something that we need to tackle in the next decade for us that lies ahead. And today, just briefly, I'll talk about 2 examples of how we're planning to tackle that. But first, just briefly, if this clicker works. There you go. So as Terence mentioned, we are the largest PropTech company across Southeast Asia. We operate consumer property marketplaces in 5 markets, in Singapore, in Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, and right here in Malaysia. We have over 25 million property seekers who visit our sites every month. We have over 2.4 million paid property listings, et cetera, et cetera. The point is as we built out across the region, we began to understand that there was this opportunity to inject much more transparency, but also that the property needs of property seekers in each of our markets was very, very different. So when you think about the trust deficit, the reason for that trust deficit was actually quite different in each of our markets. And there were 2 specific instances that really came to our attention. The first one, when we think about ambition, we said, we need to first be really clear about who our customers are. If you think about a 2-sided marketplace, you have agents and property developers on one side, essentially the sellers, if you like, and then you have the property seeker, the consumers, on the other side. Who's the most important customer? This is actually a very important conversation to have. In all 2-sided marketplaces, this tension exists between supply and demand. We made it very clear to ourselves, our board, our team, and actually to our customers, that the most important customer is the end consumer. The person who pays us $0, ringgit, but spends perhaps the most important thing with us, their time. And we started taking some concrete steps towards solving problems there. One of the problems we looked at was here in Malaysia. Last year, here in Malaysia, some of you may know this, others may not, there was a 60% home loan rejection rate in this market. 6 out of 10 Malaysians who applied for a home loan got rejected. Everybody loses if that happens, because the banks process all 10 of those applications. The developers are expecting those loans to come through so that the bookings can actually be honored. The consumer obviously needs that money to actually move into their dream homes. There's no point having an efficient marketplace to marry supply and demand if the demand side does not know what they can afford. This is something that, this is not a challenge we faced in Singapore. But when we thought about it, we said there's no point just running a classified site. We're going to have to tackle this. We had a mortgage calculator for many years, but that wasn't enough. So we launched a product called Home Loan Pre-Approval, HLPA, here in Malaysia. And we worked with the Credit Bureau of Malaysia and with Bank Negara's eCris system to make sure that people could understand their actual credit score. So for the first time in Malaysia, you could go online for free, upload your credentials, and find out exactly how much you could afford. In fact, with a 99.9% accuracy, you'd know exactly the range of home loan that you could get. And then we had a deep integration with 3 banks to start with. We started with Hong Leong Bank, Alliance Bank, with RHB Bank, and we said, and we'll expand this in the future, but we said if someone goes through this process, you've got to make the home loan process a lot more friction-free. There are 30,000 units that remain unsold today in Malaysia. Property overhang, as it's called, is perhaps one of the biggest issues for the government and the citizens of Malaysia right now. And our answer to that is to help with this. We've also started a long-term financial literacy program here to help Malaysians understand exactly how much they can afford. And then obviously our marketplace comes into action. Once we have this information, once we know exactly how much you can afford, we connect you with the listings that fit within your affordability range only. Therefore, improving the effectiveness of matching of demand and supply. We could talk about this more later, but this is the nature of some of the unique problems we face across Southeast Asia. And when we apply the lens of consumer first, we begin to find these insights on what we need to solve. Another insight came from Singapore. And in Singapore, we found that our iPhone app usage was off the charts. But also one of the things that occurs in most of the world, the number one interface for most of us to the outside world is our smartphone. And in many cases, it's the camera on that smartphone that is becoming a discovery vehicle. So if yesterday you went into your laptop or your desktop and punched in search into Google or your search engine of choice, we believe in the future it's going to be much more about visual search. I'm going to show you a brief video after this, and that's the end of my presentation. But essentially, we built out a product. It's our own proprietary tech built in Singapore. It uses machine learning, image recognition, a lightweight neural network built into our iPhone app in Singapore. It's a world's first. This does not exist anywhere else in the world. And it's essentially a visual search product. Simply put, you hold up your PropertyGuru Singapore app, point it at a building. It'll recognize the building and tell you what listings exist within it. Because the concept is, if you're going to use search engines and e-commerce companies that are going to train you to search and discover using your camera, why wouldn't you extend that behavior to property? Now, I'll be the first to admit it's private beta. No one's ever done this anywhere. Property information is very hard to find. Lat long is not sufficient. Then nobody, including the Singapore government, has the altitudes of every condominium or every unit that exists out there. So we have done a true beta launch in Singapore. We're helping the early adopters help us improve the quality of the data, etc. But we're still very excited to be pushing this because we believe the future of discovery will become one of those things. As you go to your friend's house over the weekend, you like their neighborhood, pull out your phone, and you can discover what the cost of listings are in that neighborhood. A quick video. So again, thank you. And we look forward to introducing a lot more innovations of this nature as we try and build a trust platform for property.
Okay, maybe I'll start us off with the first question for Hari. Hari, the company is now 12 years old. You started as a classifieds company, but nowadays the way you describe the company is much more prop tech. Tell us a bit more about that journey. So where are you along the journey from classifieds onto a real technology innovative company?
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction. I sort of touched upon it. If you think about a classified site, it's sort of Internet 0.0, if you like. Very effective solution, solves a lot of problems. But the most important customer is the advertiser. So you solve for the advertiser's needs first. A marketplace solves for the consumer's needs first, the searcher, much more so. And so injecting things like artificial intelligence allows us to, for example, see how you're browsing through the news articles, the listings, etc., and continually improve your browsing experience. Versus if you were just an advertising platform, all we do is put different banners and such in front of you. That's one big distinction.
A question which has come up here, which I'll put a spin on it. It says, what key positions do you need to fill as you scale the business? I think actually you've done a good job of filling all the key management positions in the last couple of years. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that journey to kind of find the right people to take the business to the next level?
Yeah, I think, when I joined the company, we were about 8 years old. It was about 4 years ago. And we had two entrepreneurs who had very successfully built out a good business. But I think we were very clear as a board and as a management team that we needed different kind of experience to take us forward for the next decade. And in collaboration with the founders, actually, we went about this process of hiring out a professional management team that has a ton of what I call scar tissue. They got a lot of experience. They've made a lot of mistakes. They've got a lot of success. So when they show up, they bring a maturity and a patience, but also a sort of a drive which is hard to explain. It's often associated with entrepreneurs in their early 20s or anything like that, not to be ageist, but some of these guys are late 30s, early 40s, and they've got plenty of energy, and they know where to spend it. And I think that's allowing us to be a lot more focused in how we drive, but also a lot more resilient to the shocks that invariably hit us in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, here's a good question. So what do you plan to do, or which direction do you plan to take your new mortgage loan application tool?
See, I think if you think about property end-to-end, seekers look at the beginning of the search process to understand what they can afford. And the solution we have right now helps address that. After that, they identify properties, they go through the search discovery process, which our core marketplace helps with. They identify the property, and then they actually need to get that mortgage to move into the house. In Singapore, we're more focused on that bottom part, where we're working with banks right now. We're trying to build out a fintech solution which makes it truly friction-free in terms of convenience, but also choice, true choice with deep integrations into banks, etc., so that you could have an end-to-end application process. In Malaysia, we are more focused at the early end to help education, etc., and then, absolutely, we would be open to sort of looking at what are the right solutions for this market. But I think one thing we have enough experience to know is you can't, unfortunately, just take one thing over from one jurisdiction to the other. So I think there we need to spend more time talking to regulators, talking to the ecosystem, to understand what is the right solution for that bottom of the funnel.
So always a tough question for CEOs. What is the single riskiest thing that keeps you up at night and that you need to address?
I think I've made enough mistakes in my life, so I don't stay up at night, frankly. I sleep pretty well. But I think the thing that stresses any CEO is the management team. I think the leadership, you're only as good as your people, particularly at our stage of growth. I get to sit up here and represent the work of a big group of people. So I think making sure they're happy, they're motivated, they're challenged. We're blessed that we have some people who have been with us 4, 5, 6 years, which is long in our industry. And so I think making sure that they want to invest and build their career with us rather than go across the road to someone else is perhaps something that I'd worry about, but it doesn't keep me up at night.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've made?
Again, same thing, people. It's always people. I think sometimes I think the mistake I made earlier on when I was a younger manager was trying to find people who were similar to me. Like, I'd like to believe that I'm a pretty driven guy, so I'd try and find men and women who look similar to that. You know, we'd hit it off, we're going to have a great time. The problem is, particularly if you pick markets like Southeast Asia, I mean, first of all, there's no market, right? I mean, we're talking about a bunch of different markets. If everyone is homogenous, you're not going to be able to find the threats that come and hit you. So I think the more painful and difficult thing to do is to find a diverse team. Much harder for the manager because they don't get motivated or inspired by the same things. But it sets up the business better. And frankly, over the long term, I've learned it eventually makes my life easier. The short term, it's painful as hell.
Well, I see the screen is flashing, so I think that's the signal for
Time's up.
Time being up. Thank you very much, Hari.
Thank you.
Pleasure, and thank you for all your questions.